Everybody can hear you.
What?
Okay, it's 10 a.m. So we're going to call this meeting to order, which is the 235th session of the 10th Council at 10 a.m. Special meeting on the budget. Roll call, Mr. Doyle.
Carter, Miller, Idala, Shramsky.
Hi. Good morning, Garland. I'm sorry about that. Councilwoman Gloria Miller, City of Pontiac.
Idala, Shramsky,
Attending remotely, City of Pontiac.
Taylor Burks. You're muted, Dr. Taylor. You're muted again, Dr. Taylor. You're muted. It's still muted, Dr. Taylor. Waterman.
Morning, Patrice Waterman, City of Pontiac, Oakland County.
Williams.
Present, attending remotely from the greatest city in the world, Pontiac, Michigan.
You're still muted, Dr. Taylor. Take the mute off. So you need to excuse.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. So where are you
Doris,
attending the meeting from? Go ahead, Dr.
Doris Taylor Burks, Pontiac, Michigan.
Okay. Mr. President, you need to excuse Carter and Idala.
Okay, is there a motion to excuse Council Pro Tem Carter and Councilwoman Petula?
Move.
Support.
Okay, I'll take the move, I believe, from Waterman and the support from Shramsky.
No, that was from Doc. That was from Doc.
Oh, okay. I'll take the move from Dr. Taylor and the support from Shramsky. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Miller,
Yes.
Shramsky,
Yes.
Taylor Burks,
Yes.
Waterman,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays.
Okay, thank you, which brings us to the first item on the agenda, which is the tax rates and the youth millage. Mr. Carrington?
Good morning.
Oh, first we have to vote to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move.
Support.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, roll call?
Ramsky,
Yes.
Taylor Burks,
Yes.
Waterman,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Mr. Carrington?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I know this morning we wanted to discuss a couple of things that were on the agenda. One was related to the millage. And secondly, we had the issue regarding the landlord landlord fee, for lack of a better description. I did have an opportunity to have some communication with our within the administration with our code enforcement team, and to get a little bit better understanding of how we could could look to approach this. I think I have an understanding from yesterday's conversation, from what Councilwoman Waterman shared with us, and what we would be trying to accomplish. And I did get some suggestions from our code enforcement team on how we could approach this. So certainly are willing and ready to engage in that discussion and figuring out some specifics on how we could do that, and then also to address any concerns as it relates to the millage. I did get some more information as in terms of the youth millage and some of the expenditures. I know there was a question about the contracts, the professional services, and how that was being proposed to be spent in the next fiscal year. And we do have that information and can provide that this morning. And, again, we want to make sure any questions there are concerns as it relates to the millage and the need for that millage to get approved, hopefully on the 8th, but no later than the 9th. We want to address those concerns and provide any information that's needed between now and next week.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions. Councilwoman
Mr.
Waterman?
President?
Yep.
Yes, because I was not at the meeting with you all with the youth recreation, I'm going to kind of like sit back and listen, but I need to know why there is going to be some discussion, because last year we specifically talked about it, about what I was speaking of with the landlords, and it was placed in the budget. I need to know why it was not put in there, and why do we have to have discussion about it?
Well, honestly, Councilman Waterman, I don't know what transpired in terms of that fee not being added. And in terms of the discussion, it's really just getting some agreement on how we want to approach this. So it's not a debate about the merits of it. It's really more so a discussion about how we can best approach this. And, talking with our code enforcement team, they alluded to a couple of different options that would be available. One would be, basically the city removing it, and then as opposed to setting a fine, the city's seeking a reimbursement cost. Once the cleanup has been done. Another approach would be a standardized fee trying to estimate what the cost could be and just setting a flat fee. Some other suggestions were looking at, in addition to or instead of a fine, putting this to a civil infraction where it would then be a misdemeanor and have increased legal ramifications. So, we I think are in agreement with what we want to happen. We just want to make sure we get some agreement on how we can best do that and make sure that we sync that up in terms of the fee schedule, anything else that needs to happen during this budget process. So it's not, I think, we're not trying to at all engage in the debate on the merits, but discuss how we can best accomplish what our objectives are.
Okay, well, when are we going to know how this is going to be set up? Because, and how will we know?
Well, I can, as I said, I did visit with the code enforcement team. I have been provided with some of these options. What I can do is have them provide a more detailed breakdown of these options and what they would suggest. In all honesty, just, had the conversation late yesterday and just haven't had a time to drill down into a lot of the specifics. But I think broadly, we can discuss the approaches and they can provide, later today and tomorrow, provide some more details on what they would suggest that looks like. But again, I think broadly, and in addition, they also cited a couple of examples that are being done in Warren and Madison Heights. And, we can provide some specifics in terms of what each of those approaches would look like. As I mentioned, clean up and seeking reimbursement, putting together a standardized fee, and we can, I can speak with them today and come up with what those numbers would look like around a standardized fee. And then lastly, looking at what it would look like if we went the route of a civil infraction, a kind of a misdemeanor going that route, and how would it look.
So you'll have that information for us on Tuesday?
Yeah, I'll certainly speak with the code enforcement team and get that information no later than that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm working on a number of responses and we'll targeting Monday because I know we're kind of going into a pre-deliberation next week, and so I want to start.
Okay, today is Thursday, so you got Thursday and Friday. I would like to have that information on Mondays before we go into our meeting on Tuesday.
Okay. We can certainly
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you.
Council President.
Yep, go ahead, Attorney Sharp.
So just to piggyback off of the question and to Mr. Carrington, this is just my opinion. From when this first started, the discussion was really kind of centered around making it a standard fee, because I think potentially, and obviously this is for the council to make the decision, but I think if you start going down the road of a civil infraction, now you're talking about involving the court and all this other, a lot more has to go into that, where this was intended to be similar to like the grass cutting. So when individuals don't cut their lawn and the city has to go in and they have to cut it, then there's a fee. To me, that seems like it would be a lot easier to do for them. They, just like I know that there is when individuals are, their things are removed from a property, there is a fee assessed per room in terms of a square footage with a property. So I would think that they would be able to kind of hedge their bet and come up with a flat fee that could be assessed, because to me, that would be a lot easier to do than to try to say, okay, we're going to do civil infractions or something else, because that involves, again, the court, and then that's taking up the court's time and just a lot more steps. Whereas this could just be an implementation of the fee and put into the schedule. Because to me, if there's a lot of deliberation, if this has to be done by the 7th, they don't have time to come up with those steps and so forth.
Yeah, and
by that time, right? So this is something that has to be done by next week. So to me, it seems like it would be a lot easier to just come up with a flat fee, but that's just my
Yeah, and
thought.
I know I wouldn't disagree with that. I would expect that the code enforcement team would agree with you. But I certainly did want to present all the options that they have provided to me from yesterday. But I would agree with you in terms of, taking the fee approach and, that being a, probably a more direct and, given the timeline, a more realistic approach for meeting what it sounds like we want to be able to do.
Yeah, Mr. Carrington, did they give you some numbers on a fee? Because I guess the issue, especially with reimbursement or anything like that, is you want to make it prohibitive for them to do it. We've got landlords that are just setting people out, and if the fee is cheaper than them actually cleaning it up themselves, then they'll just set it out and let the city do it. So that's not, I don't think that's the intention of putting the fee in there. So did they give you any numbers?
I did not, was not able to get a number yesterday. They did say, they would need to do some analysis and, we can get at least a preliminary number, pretty soon. But I think, to your point, those are certainly some of the things that we will take into consideration. I mean, you want the fee to incentivize certain behavior and provide a disincentive to certain types of behaviors. So I think that certainly is the logic behind what the number will need to look like, or kind of the range on the number, to make sure that we, are encouraging the type of behavior that we want to disencourage and the type of behavior that we don't want.
Mr. President, if I might interject in here again, I thought, and Attorney Sharp, I thought we put in that fee. I thought I had $1,000 to $5,000. I thought $1,000 was put in there for that fee.
No, they didn't put it. They didn't put any number. They never put a number. That was the whole point. They never put a number.
Last year they didn't put the number, because I know I distinctly said it should be at least $1,000 or more.
So there,
I don't recall that.
so
I could be wrong.
Yeah,
So-
I'm having fun on book, because I do believe that it was $1,000 or so that I had in there, because I said the highest we can go.
See,
So
I
I'm
think that to that point, Councilwoman Waterman, and to the president's point, let's just say hypothetically you get a home, and again, I know that they set it, when they do the set outs, it's based off square footage. So let's just say the cost that it will cost somebody to put somebody out for that size home would be $900. Well, it's really not punitive. So to the point, I think they need to do some kind of cost analysis and see what that usually looks like and double it. So maybe it should be like $5,000. Maybe it should be $3,000.
$1,000 to $5,000 should be the fee.
But I'm not sure.
Okay.
Unless they, again, come up with something. If they did it that way with a sliding scale, then they would have to, talk about like a square footage. But if you just have it, if they do some assessment where it's universal, and they say, okay, this looks to be appropriate for any size, and it is kind of punitive in nature, then, it's easy. But, that's just my thought on that. But yes, I don't recall that being put in the book for last year. I know we discussed it, but I didn't recall them actually putting it in. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's my suggestion, Mr. Carrington, to them, that we go starting at $1,000 up to $5,000, that range, however it goes, because we have to stop these landlords.
Sure. And I know, and looking at my notes, I know one cost estimate was $3,000. I don't know if that was the fee or if that was just the estimate that they were giving, but that was one number. But we'll certainly continue to do some more detailed analysis and be able to provide what those figures will look like. I did want to point out, and I think it was Attorney Sharp who had spoke about, anyway, I know that another thing that was provided was kind of using this as taking an approach that's similar with grass cutting, where And I don't know all of the requirements from a process standpoint for this, but having a fee or where the city would remove it and then place things onto a tax bill as a means of enforcement of that. Also, I know that can tend to be a more you tend to get a stronger response when things get placed on the tax bill, as opposed to just having fees that are not, that may not be responded to by whomever the fee is being levied against.
So, Mr. Carrington, we need to be able to put that in place with this particular fee.
Sure.
So,
certainly we can give that number and provide a, kind of just a standardized fee that I think can be placed onto the fee schedule. That certainly is something that I'm confident we can do if that's the approach we want to take.
Okay. Anybody else got questions for Mr. Carrington? And you're going to email us that youth millage information?
Yes, I'll get that out to you today. As I said, I know there was a question about, there was approximately $200,000 in contracts or professional services. And the director did put that information and got that over to me.
Okay, anybody else got any questions?
I guess my question is to you, Council President, in terms of with the youth millage. So is it the pleasure of either you pass it, you don't pass it, it gets modified? Like what is the question or questions regarding that?
Well, after they give us this information, then I guess Tuesday we can decide how much we want to levy. So you can levy 0 all the way up to the 0.5 or whatever it is.
Okay, and so I guess just for clarification and maybe for the other council members, per what impacts the amount? So is it, I'm just trying to understand. So up to, so if you reduce it by what? 10, 5, 2, 1, what does that dollar figure look like?
So,
Mr. Carrington, or President, or Council President, I'm listening.
Yeah, so the youth millage is, the full levy is about $1 million.
Right.
And so any reduction, let's say you reduce it by 0.1 or whatever, that's 200,000.
Okay, so that's correct, Mr. Carrington. So that I think then that might assist the council with, making that decision if in fact they want to keep it at that, if they don't want to do it, or if they want to reduce it by something, just knowing what that amount is my point.
I'm sorry, Council, were you asking me that question?
I was just asking to is that correct? So in terms of what the president just said.
Yeah, so I don't know what the millage is. I recall that we were projecting about $1 million. I don't recall what is it 1 mil? I don't have that information in front of me. I don't recall offhand what the assessment is. But I do know it was, we were just a shade over $1 million in what we were projecting from that millage.
What the council president just stated. Restate what you just said, Council President.
Yeah, so a reduction by a point, the millage is a half a mil.
Okay.
So in the budget book on page 22, it says the revenue brings in 1.286105. I don't know why they have expenditures in this budget of 1.561,187, which is problematic. But yeah, so for each percentage, half a percentage point or whatever, that's $200,000. So if we reduced it from a half a mil to 0.4, that would be $200,000 less. Is that correct?
Not, I don't think that is.
If you can get us to
That's
scale.
what you need to
Okay.
know.
Because
Yeah,
the
that's
one
what
thing
you
to
need
keep in
know.
mind is that the total revenues are not all coming from the millage, that there are some other revenues in there.
Right. What I'm saying is the millage itself generates about $1 million is what I'm saying.
Correct. Yes.
And then you guys get the grant from Williams International
Yep.
that y'all lump in there, and that's that other 200-something thousand. So my point was just saying that if it's $500,000, if you reduce it by point whatever, that's $200,000 just to give them an estimate. But if you can give us the scale of what that looks like.
To your point, because that going from 0.5 to 0.4 is a 20. That's about a 20% reduction. So yeah, roughly speaking, that is correct. But I'll get those exact numbers for you.
That kind of goes to the
Yeah, Mr. President, if I might.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Waterman. Yep.
Okay. And thank you for explaining, and thank you, Attorney Sharp. I'm just looking at this when you say on page 22 of the budget ordinance, the revenues and then expense. Why is it almost $300,000 over the expenditures? How does that?
Well,
Why is that? Because we have the Williams
fund balance.
Pardon me?
There's also available fund balance for that fund. That's a separate fund. So there is a fund balance that existed in that fund.
So we need a complete breakdown of that when you send over the youth millage, because if there is a fund balance and we've come out of a pandemic, it should not only be a fund balance, but I don't understand why, especially with Boys and Girls Club operating most of the services, that we would be over budget, especially if we don't have to pay for golf draft.
Okay.
And I know they weren't.
And we're not,
doing much
we
over
have
there,
not
so
been
I
over
just really
budget.
can't
Now, I mean,
understand
the
that
budget
figure.
as it's laid out does have revenues. It's proposing a budget with expenses that are exceeding revenue. So we would be using some of the fund balance. But this current fiscal year, we're not projecting to be over budget.
Would you say that again, Mr. Carrington? What did you say?
It should have never been over budgeted, but I don't have anything to say.
So
There you go.
I was just responding to the council president's comment about being over budget. I just wanted to be clear that we're not being over, but this fiscal year, we're not expecting to be quote unquote over budget. For next fiscal year, the recommended budget does have expenses exceeding revenues. That's the proposed budget, where we would be using some of the fund balance. But the department and the fund have not been over budget in the sense of what was appropriated, approved, and exceeding that. So just keeping in mind that the fund balance is the kind of the cumulative surpluses, year-to-year surpluses, and I think we were projecting to start the fiscal year. We were starting with about $400,000, I believe, in fund balance, and then this year we're actually going to run a surplus. We're projecting a surplus from what was initially budgeted. Obviously, given COVID, we didn't expend as much money as was projected. But then going into next year, the recommended budget does have about $275,000 in expenses above the revenues that we're projecting.
Yeah, if we could just have a complete breakdown of that, because I don't want to just belabor the point without the numbers in front of us. And looking at that, it just doesn't make sense to me that we would have a cost overrun projected in this new year coming up with less expenditures, unless you guys are planning on substantially increasing personnel or something else that we don't know about in the youth millage. So just looking at that breakdown, we haven't done $1 million worth of service for the youth for Pontiac. So I'm just trying to figure out how the department could run at 1.5, especially without capital outlay or anything else. So I'm just really confused on that.
I think the biggest thing is the increased amount of money on programming. And I know that's where the largest increase in terms of what we're proposing is specifically on programming. In terms of what was budgeted last year and what's proposed for this year, there's $120,000 increase in that alone.
Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead.
I heard you say something about you were questioning that because of the Boys and Girls Club, but you guys are spending quite a bit in programming now. And if you listen to the presentation with the Boys and Girls Club, they let you know, again, with additional staffing and the programming that they want to do for the upcoming year. But you are spending, regardless of this is, and Mr. Carrington, I guess you can correct me if I'm wrong, but despite the pandemic, I mean, you still had those costs that you were paying for the programming. It didn't stop with this current fiscal year. And the next one is going to be even more.
Yeah, I think two things. One is the programming from a budget standpoint, what was budgeted for last year and what we're proposing for next fiscal year. What was budgeted for this current fiscal year and what's being proposed for next fiscal year. There is an increase in the programming budget.
Yeah.
Additionally, due to COVID, we did not spend as much on programming that was, as was budgeted. And that's one of the reasons why the department, the fund is currently, projected to be under budget due to the fact that the programming, those expenses just didn't get incurred because we weren't able to provide a large amount of those services due to COVID.
It was still quite a bit more. You got to look to, you need to look at at what you've got going with this programming, because I hear you, Mr. Carrington, but I've still been looking at the numbers, and it's still quite a bit. And like he said, for the next fiscal year, it's recommended in terms of increased programming. So
certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions for Mr. Carrington?
Mr. Carrington, when are you gonna have this information? Oh, Lord, sorry.
I'll have it no later than Monday.
What did you say, sir?
No later than Monday, along with the information on the landlord fee.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we're going to adjourn this meeting at 10:32. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Council.